everyone has been that mum or dad who is stuck at home, either in that first day with the child or when you're pregnant or even when they're 5 and you're just having a bad day with the kids and you scroll through Instagram and you feel like crap because everybody is having a great day and their kids are beautifully behaved. But I am yet to have one of those days, and we all have them, where I'll scroll through Instagram and it'll be like, you're having a great day, you're having a great day. Oh, you're also having a crap day. Oh, now I don't feel so bad.
Hello everyone, welcome to Creator, the influence marketing podcast by Digital Voices. Today we are doing the first of our ever influence marketing specialists sessions, so we're super excited. We've got Amie Caitlin here, who is a genius and a friend of mine, I would like to say, on the record.
No pressure.
And happens to be head of influence marketing at Mumsnet. Yes. So do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Amie Caitlin Shearer, and I'm head of influence marketing at Mumsnet.
Yeah. So the podcast today, we're going to be talking about exactly what makes an influence marketing campaign good. So there's a lot to cover, but I thought that would be, start with an overview.
Yeah. Get my thinking cap on.
So how did you get into influence marketing?
I've been in marketing for about 8 years, and I used to work at O2 way back when, and we were experimenting with bloggers and stuff. This is going back to kind of 2011, and I remember we invited a bunch of bloggers down to a Halloween haunted house event to launch, I think it was a Sony phone, and that was kind of my first experience. And I remember YouTube inviting us to a training day, what is content? And it was like, I don't know, what is content? And that was kind of the start of it, and then I started moving more into social media. And then when I had my daughter about 5 years ago, I actually started a blog myself. Very sort of stereotypical pregnancy diary type stuff, but that meant that I really fell into this world quite heavily. And obviously PRs were contacting me, SEO agencies were contacting me, and it clicked very, very quickly for me that there was a better way you could do this kind of blogger outreach stuff, and B, this was kind of the next frontier for marketing. So I was freelancing at that time, and I started to shift into this sort of type of work. And yeah, fast forward, and here I am as head of influence marketing at Mumsnet, and we manage a network of about 10,000 influencers, obviously predominantly parents, given we're Mumsnet, and we also manage campaigns and stuff for clients as well.
Awesome. So how did you find, when you left O2 and you were documenting your pregnancy journey, how did you find being on kind of the other side, being quite independent? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, it was an entirely different world, I think. This would be 2013, 2014. So this was super early days of bloggers, and it was mainly PRs that had kind of clicked, oh, if I send you a product, you'll feature it, and that's lovely coverage for me. The idea that you might get paid for something was really quite out there as a concept. And then came the SEOs, and they were like, oh, we can up our Google ranking here if you feature us in a blog post. So it was kind of slowly coming, but having that understanding of the other side of things definitely helped when I jumped to this side. I don't have a blog anymore, but understanding what it's like to receive those emails from a PR and which ones are you likely to actually click on versus which ones are you just going to be delete. Yeah, that was really helpful.
Yeah, I always think about subject lines when we're reaching out to people, and I'm it's always potential paid opportunity.
Yes.
Because you want to be very clear from the beginning, otherwise you'll just get lost in this sea of ridiculous niceties.
But it's also things I remember even sort of a few years ago, loads of bloggers saying, it's just so obvious when it's a blanket email and they're just kind of scattergunning, hoping something sticks and that someone replies. It's not that hard to personalize it. Yes, it takes an extra 30 seconds, 15 seconds for every single influencer you want to outreach to, but in a way that makes it better because it means that you're actually double checking, is this somebody that I want to outreach to? I mean, I haven't blogged for 3 years and I'm still receiving emails from PR agencies and SEO agencies saying, hi, we noticed that you blog about XYZ. Would this be of interest? I'm clearly you haven't looked
recently at all.
Anything here. Where have you even found my email from? I must just be on some database or something that you've bought, which is also quite insightful.
And I also think the people that reply when it's a very general, I know nothing about you email, are people who don't get that many offers or who don't have that high engagement. So they're often influencers who are looking to make cash anywhere they can. Yeah. And that's not the type of creator you want to work with anyway.
Absolutely.
For a campaign.
Completely.
The whole team spends loads of time when we're crafting emails. I'm like, right, you have to go through their last however many videos. You have to watch them. Mm-hmm. You have to say something you liked about them. And you have to find out, if it's parents, you have to find out how old the kids are.
I was a judge at the Influence Marketing Awards this year. So this is back in January, February. And one of the campaigns I judged, obviously I had a probably more understanding of this demographic than the average judge, but the campaign was targeting teenagers. So 50% of the influencers that they had gone for were people who would access that teenage audience. So let's say age 16 to 18. And the other half were the parents, because obviously it was a health related thing about, it was either vaccines or vitamins or something. And understandably, parents do still have some influence with their teenagers, even though teenagers would rather that they don't. So I'm looking through the influencers that are on the campaign, and obviously the parent ones, I instantly recognised the majority of the names on the campaign, and 2 out of the 6 had teenagers. 1 had toddlers, 1 had a newborn, and it just wasn't the right target audience at all. They're parents, which absolutely fulfills the brief of parents, but not really when you actually look at the objectives and who they were trying to access. So that was quite frustrating. They obviously didn't win.
There's this concept that I always like to think about when choosing creators called like homophilia. So it means you're friends with people who are like you. So I assume you watch people who are like you. So often parents, like, yes, there are some teenage viewers who love watching family vloggers, but most of the time, if you're a parent watching another parent vlogger, you're watching someone who's at a similar stage of being a parent to you.
Completely. Yeah.
I just don't understand why a marketing company wouldn't understand that.
No. I mean, there are some variations. So, for example, obviously, I have a 5-year-old, and one of my favourite people to follow at the moment actually has a 16-year-old, and the mum is actually in her 50s and closer to my own mum's age. But she kind of speaks to me on a different level because it's quite nice. It's more about like the mother-daughter relationship, which obviously that I adhere to, but I mean, I'm not looking to her for product recommendations because clearly we are in very different places in our lives. But, you know, if I'm looking for product recommendations, you're absolutely right. I'm going to be looking at the influencers who've got 4, 5, 6-year-olds who are going through all of that similar sort of stuff as me.
It's like watching Gilmore Girls versus watching something because you want to buy it. Like, you watch Gilmore Girls and you're like, I am doing this to feel nice and happy and to look at like an ideal mother-daughter relationship.
Unless it's the revival and then you just feel angry the whole way through.
Oh yeah, you don't watch the revival. Really, really angry at the revival. We've actually discussed this. We've discussed this over drinks before anyway. But like, you watch that for it being heartwarming rather than to feel kind of an affinity or get product recommendations. Completely agree with you on that. So when did Mumsnet find you? Because you were a blogger? Is that how it happened?
No, so I was working at a different agency before I came to Mumsnet, and I'd started a blogger network for them as well. That was education and family related. And then I came to Mumsnet as an editor in a very different role, and one way or another kind of then ended up taking on the blogger network as well. And at the time it was the blogger network. And over the last 2 and a bit years, we've undergone a massive change. We've rebranded. We're now the Mumsnet Influencer Network. And up until that point, the commercial side of what we did had been quite minimal. It was much more a case of if a brand came to us we do a lot of market research in our demographic. So if they came to us for that, we could also find them a couple of bloggers to take part. Whereas now we are a fully fledged kind of business area. We have our own revenue line and we're out there chasing clients in our own right kind of thing. So, and that's partly because I think until 2 and a bit years ago, there wasn't necessarily the same call for that. We're obviously in a very different place now.
And it's also, I think, in the last 2 years, people have started appreciating micro-influencers. And I think that's one of the things that Mumsnet has that's quite special, is this access to very active, very kind of prolific publishers of people who, I mean, in your network of 10,000, which must be ludicrous to manage, like very interesting to communicate with 10,000 people.
Yeah.
In that network, what is like the average vlogger size?
So we put people into buckets, obviously, when they join the network. So we have what we call nano influencers, which is up to 20,000 followers across all their channels. So they might only have Instagram, and if they have 16,000 on that, they're a nano, versus if they have a blog, Instagram and Twitter, and they still only have a maximum of 20,000, you're nano. Then we have our mini micros, which is where the majority of our work happens, and that's 20,000 to 100,000 followers across their channels. We find they have the highest engagement rates. They're incredibly and increasingly professional, so they have a bit of an idea of what they're doing. They're definitely kind of in it for commercial reasons, as opposed to just they have an Instagram that was a hobby that has kind of spiraled a little bit and now they suddenly have 7,000 followers kind of thing. And then you hit that 100,000 mark and something happens. So between 100 and 400,000, we call them micro influencers, which is the term most people know. But we differentiate it because the engagement rate just starts to drop when you hit that 100,000 mark. And at the same time, prices really increase. So, I mean, literally somebody goes from 90,000 to 100K and they add an extra zero on the end of their bill. So that is worth it in a lot of cases. I mean, there are a number of influencers in that bracket we work with that are absolutely worth every penny. And there's also a few that buck that trend and have a surprisingly high engagement rate. But on the whole, it starts to drop. So then after that, you've got macro, social stars, celebrities, goes on and on. I'd say the majority of the network, by a long way, are in that mini micro bucket. And they're a real pleasure to work with. They're really on it, they're really into it, they get it, they're professional, but they're not sort of silly, bonkers, crazy money.
So often, because as an agency, Digital Voices, we do something similar. We don't actually manage talent, neither of us do in our role. We find the best talent for every campaign.
Yeah.
And we often find, because we guarantee organic views on YouTube, we have to find creators whose audience are really highly engaged.
Yes.
And that tends to be, those people, to get that value for money, tend to be the people who are kind of rising stars at the time. So they tend to have, for us on YouTube, it's not actually quite as small. Often it will be anything from like 10,000 subscribers to like 500,000 subscribers, but their audience are super engaged and they often will be kind of their first brand deals or one of their first brand deals, and they really appreciate that we've chosen them and that we're quite honest with the way we work with them, and we're very easy to like explain contracts, or we'll try and go out of our way to kind of handhold them if we think the edit isn't quite right. We've brought in external editors to try and
we've had feedback from the network before that's exactly the same, that they really value the fact that we have that personal relationship with them. We haven't, despite the fact we have 10,000 of them, we haven't lost that relationship. And I've made sure that the team are really very much professional, but still willing to give that feedback, find the time, and we always pay on time, we always pay, we always kind of all those basics are in place. That then there's a bit of give and take, and it pays off in a massive way.
Yeah, it's also like if you are someone's first brand deal or someone who helps them be more professional and learn about the industry, and then you treat them with respect, I think it can be kind of like you working with them at quite a pivotal time in their career. And this is where I'm a big advocate of working with micro-influencers or mini-micro, whatever we want to call them, is that you're helping them become entrepreneurs in a way they thought they could be, that they maybe didn't know how to get there before.
Yeah. It's part of what I love about what we do, is the fact that we have that network and they support each other as well. They really are a community, which obviously Mumsnet at its heart, that's what we are, whether you're in the network or whether you're just a normal user on the site. And so for me, it's really, really important that we don't lose that as a team, even though we've added in a big way this commercial aspect. But that commercial aspect partly came because that's what the members wanted. When we surveyed them just last year, we said, what do you want our priority to be over the next year? And we gave them a bunch of options, including other, tell us something else. And it came out that they were like, what we need help with is how do we commercialize, how do we get contact with brands, how do we make sure that we can keep a roof over our head, and also just that understanding of actually how do you go about that brand partnership in a really effective way. So it's important to me we don't lose that.
It's interesting because there's not that much out there in terms of, as much as this is a massively growing industry, and there are so many courses now, like people launching courses on like how to be a digital superstar, or how to grow your channel, they still are very scarce on brand details. They're very scarce on like contractual negotiations. They're very scarce on kind of information about the nitty gritty and commercialization side, which I think is actually I think it's kind of serving to help the people who are doing well now and to keep the industry as it was. So I think like people who break that down to you through the network, or like
so we're not talent management, as you said, so the people on our network are free to work with other agencies. Brands do go to them directly as well, but if you work with us on a campaign, because you're part of the network, we do protect you a little bit, and obviously we have a brief that we will have written and agreed with the brand beforehand. We know if you can fulfill that because we have a platform behind the scenes that's tracking all your content, your audience demographics. We can see what your average engagement rate is. So we kind of know going in, okay, if you're just nowhere near going to be able to fulfill this, we would never put you in that position. But equally, if a piece of content just doesn't deliver, like we were chatting to one this week, and it's so authentic to her, that buzzword, to her channel, there's no reason it shouldn't be performing. And all of us were sat there scratching our heads, including the influencer. And we're kind of there to help protect her from that. Whereas if you were going on it on your own, especially when you're in this smaller bracket of you've only kind of got that 25,000, you're not in the fro, who's like
amazing,
going to be able to protect herself. She's got her team involved, whatever. It's just got somebody there to sort of bounce that idea off of, why isn't this working anymore? Or what did I do wrong with this post? But equally, how do you have that conversation with the brand? I haven't hit my benchmark. I can offer you, an Instagram story to help make up the difference, or just different ideas. Or like you were saying on YouTube, could you edit it differently, or things like that.
Similarly, we're trying to protect people, but we'll guarantee that number of organic views for a campaign. We'll do it across multiple creators, and we will not tell the influencer what they're supposed to get. We'll say to them, we need a certain number of views, but we won't tell them what. Because often we feel like we don't want to put undue pressure on them to feel as though they have to, at any point, buy fake views or anything like that, because the whole point of this is trust. Yes. And I think if we said to them at the end of a campaign, like, okay, so we've negotiated this content with you, it kind of hasn't worked. We've just done it with someone, actually, where it's the first time we're really close, but we haven't quite hit the benchmark we wanted, because it was a one creator campaign, and that's really tough. Literally, most of the time the other creators shelter that person, so there'll be like we'll massively overreach the campaign target. But this one we haven't, because it's one creator, and so we've literally spoken to them and been like, okay, the reason we think it is this title. Can you try and tweak it over the weekend? And they've been like, yes.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I was listening to another podcast about the industry, and they were talking about, why do brands need an agency? Or, and that's a conversation that's been going on for a long time. This is kind of a similar thing in that agencies will bring a much broader perspective. And if you think about it, you've got the brand on one side, you've got the influencer on the other. You've got the agency in the middle who can both advise the brand and say, this is how we find the right influencer for you. This is, you should be on YouTube, or you should be on Instagram, or you should be doing Pinterest, whatever it is. But you've got that for the influencer as well. You've got a much broader perspective to be able to say, actually, try this in your title, or have you used these tags, or what is it that, you're doing differently? We learned about this on a different campaign we did, try this instead. And because it is very easy, either as an influencer, when you're kind of bogged down in your own style, your own habits of posting, same with a brand, to become very blinkered.
Brands are incredible and really know the KPIs they want to hit. Influencers know their content really well, but there are moments where if they had a direct conversation, they would never work together again, because the brand will say things like, can they do an unboxing or an app review? And you're like, no. And the influencer's like, no. And if they heard that directly, they would never talk to that brand. Whereas the influencer as well, sometimes they have wonderful but slightly off the wall ideas that the brand would be terrified of.
Need someone to make them a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, someone just to sit in between and go, that's great, maybe let's tweak it this way. And I think someone they can be honest with as well, because if a brand turns around to you directly, and it's funny because brands have so much power, if a brand turns around to you and the influencer's doing, say, the first in a series of content or is desperate to get a long-term partnership, and the brand turns around and says, no, you didn't do well enough, but with no explanations of why, that will break that person like that, especially if it's someone who is their first brand deal, they're quite a fragile situation, or they're struggling to pay their bills. That can like completely wreck someone's confidence. Yeah. Whereas if it comes from someone who's kind of on everyone's side, like I've had both brands and creators be like, you're on our side, right? And I'm like, no, we're on literally everybody's side. Like, we just want to do a good campaign. I think that just protects them a little bit more.
Yeah.
What is your favourite part of running Mumsnet campaigns?
I really enjoy coming up with the creative concept. So especially now we're more established, you know, sort of 2 years ago, it's very much, here, have 5 bloggers. They will do a review of your product, while we were kind of building trust in the industry. There's that word again. Whereas now we're getting to do some really quite exciting things. So like we're part of the big Kinder ice cream launch for Unilever. We've got ambassadors doing that, and they're literally kind of doing content for sort of 7 or 8 months straight. Not like spamming people, but it's just really interesting and a different way to work. Whereas then doing a pitch for somebody else where we've got, you know, multiple big and small names. We've helped Scottish Widows with Facebook Lives and doing stuff in the House of Commons. And so it's that kind of coming up with the creative concept that's really going to fly. That's the part I enjoy. And then I have my lovely team who actually execute it and like actually get it done. I love the people though as well. I think probably the people aspect of whatever I'm doing is what I love the most. I'm a real people person, and I just, that, like, I'll sit on Twitter and just chat to our members and be like, oh, bugger, I've wasted another hour of my day. Whoops. And like whenever we get to do an event, the events, again, because I get to actually go out and meet the influencers, hear what their pet peeves are, what their grievances are, but also what's really interesting and exciting to them in the industry at the moment. That's what I love.
But it also means that if you know the people really well, you can bounce the creative. Because if you don't know people or platforms or creators on it, your creative will be kind of a cool idea that just won't fly at all.
Yeah, so that's what's really nice at the moment. So a year ago, I had an all-new team in-house at Mumsnet. We had a bit of a shift, and that meant that pretty much all of that talent understanding was resting with me, whereas now Abby and Ellie have been with me for a year. They know some of our influencers better than I do on a one-on-one basis, because obviously they're the ones who are actually contacting them on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones that pop up in their inboxes all the time. I'm just the random face that kind of occasionally does a Facebook Live or podcasts like this.
The celebrity.
So, no, let's not overplay it. But
you are good at them though.
Thanks. So that's really nice, because it's really collaborative between the three of us now. When a brief comes in, it's like, right, who are we going to go with? And like Ellie and my team is like beauty and fashion. That's her niche, and YouTube. Whereas I'm like, YouTube, I get it, you know, it's great, but I'm very much in the parenting world, like, because I'm a mum and I was a parent blogger for a while and stuff. But Instagram's my jam, and Pinterest I love. They're my happy places, whereas Abby likes Snapchat. So we kind of all, it makes it much more collaborative. We all really understand, and we all bring different people all the time, because we all kind of know different influencers from the network, which is a real strength.
Which is the thing as well with, I mean, I hate to go back to it, but the reason brands should use an agency often is because, like, as wonderful as your knowledge can be, especially if you're like the influence marketing person at a brand, that's it. You have one brain. Yeah. Whereas like I know on the team we've got like 6, 7, if you include 2 people work from home, so 7. But like if we all come together, we bring completely different perspectives, and it makes you a better thinking team.
Absolutely.
And you come up with like ridiculous ideas you'd never have come up with before. And it's kind of like, please just let us try and do the thinking for you. It's not that we're better, it's just that we have more experience in this, and like more people with more experience.
It's just more brains to bounce ideas off of. And I have a philosophy I think my team would back me up on this, that no idea is a bad one, because your bad idea will spark somebody else to bounce off it and come up with something else, which will spark something else. And eventually you'll get to that point where it's like, now we have the idea. Now we're good to go. Let's roll. Which, as you say, if you have, and brands are increasingly having an influencer marketing person, which I'm so glad about.
Really happy. Thank you.
Get it.
Keep hiring them.
Yes. But again, they're one person. And so they're great in terms of coming up with those KPIs, and they know the overarching idea of what they want to achieve. And it's much easier having one person who understands what we do in-house than having to try and figure out among the whole team, like, who do you want me to speak to? But until they have the capacity to have a full-on team, they are going to be hindered by the fact that you only have one person.
And data tools, like you guys have the network, which makes it much easier to communicate with people and to see how people are responding.
We're really fortunate on that, actually, because most agencies still have to, when they get the brief, are like, right, now we start the research phase. It helps that we're so niched down. You know, it's literally parents, women aged 25 to 44, and increasingly people come to us for dads. We do have them, just obviously our name makes people think women. So we not only know our niche really well, but because we've got that ready-made network, we have the communication to literally put the brief out to tender, and you're going to get a shortlist back of sometimes up to 500 people who are available, agree with those terms, will make you shit-hot content for your target audience, and then we'll whittle that down based on, you know, all of the other stuff, like engagement rates and who's actually looking at the content and stuff like that.
It's really interesting because often when people hear you work in influence marketing, they're like, oh, cool, so do you just know the people? And you're like, no.
I mean, some of them.
Some of them, but also you're like, that's not how campaigns should be run. Like, just a heads up, because this is about good campaigns.
Yes.
Don't just go for people you know. That's really silly.
Nepotism is not a good thing.
Nepotism in politics, nepotism in economics, like nepotism in influence marketing in general, not great.
Not helpful.
Yeah. So we always work out who people's target customer is and then take that demographic information and match it to every YouTube channel that exists and then pull lists. Often they'll go from 8 million creators to 1,500. But you still end up with 1,500 channels on a database that you have to go through and whittle down and cut people from and decide who's actually a good fit.
Hypothetically, say you had 10 influencers on a campaign, is what the brand has paid for and agreed to and everything. They might get a shortlist of up to 20 names. So we really shortlist for them. And those 20 names are available, all of the other stuff, agreeing to those terms, but absolutely tailored to that brief as well. And that's part of the kind of, that's partly what makes us so kind of fitting for our niche. Yeah. Because, if you want to reach gamers that are aged 18 to 24 and male, we're not going to be able to help you. We won't have that inventory at our fingertips.
We do normally, I think, for three creators, we'd probably do a list of 8 to 10, which I think is about a similar ratio. Do you present content ideas with the creators, or do you?
It depends on the campaign. Yeah. So sometimes, a brief I was writing today, for example, a response to brief, it's going to be 3 in that micro bracket. So they'll get a smaller shortlist, and we've kind of got an idea. We want one of them to be super, super foodie, one of them to not be foodie at all, and it's much more just a case of, I'm a parent, and as long as my kids are fed, and maybe it's vaguely healthy, and I can swap the crisps out for something else, I'm winning. And one who's kind of in the middle.
You want to see fresh ideas, because otherwise you'll use the same people over and over and again. Yes. Their audience will get slightly saturated and slightly bored of them doing so much sponsored content, which I think oversaturation is an issue in this market. Yes. We always try and ask creators what else they've got coming up, so that we know that when the sponsorship comes out, it won't be.
When we recruit, there is a question in that form where they sign up that says, have you worked with a competitor in the last 3 months? And also, do you have any agreements to work with anybody already in the pipeline? And if we know that they need to have an exclusivity clause in there, because it's, we had one, for example, at Christmas, they were a chocolate brand and they wanted an exclusivity clause against chocolate, toys, any ice creams, kind of anything sweet at all. And we were like, woo, and it's the Christmas period. Well, that's going to be fun to recruit. Great.
We've got one.
No, we did manage it, but we also had to pay a hefty sort of exclusivity fee to ensure that they didn't work with somebody over Christmas in any of those niches. But going back to that personal relationship again, one of our influencers, we noticed out of 10 posts, 8 of them on Instagram in the most recent posts were ad. And we just fired off an email that was just like, just be aware.
Heads up.
That's quite a lot. And it will affect your engagement rate, which means that you're less likely to get put forward even if you sign up and say you're available and everything. So we are kind of monitoring, especially people that we work with really regularly. Although it's not talent management, we do kind of have a bit of a closer eye on some things than the average agency might. So we're this weird hybrid. But your question about do we have content ideas that go across with the shortlist? Sometimes we actually ask influencers to submit their idea. So in that case, absolutely. And it would be, we did one with carbon monoxide last year, and we ended up with one woman whose dad was a firefighter. So obviously she talked about it from an entirely different perspective. One woman who'd had carbon monoxide poisoning. So really varied, and that worked really well. Whereas other ones, it's literally like, you're going to be filming this, you're going to be doing this on Instagram, and it's very kind of tailored. So the brand would have already bought into that idea.
And if you hadn't asked for their ideas, you'd never have known.
No,
and that's,
exactly.
We're always like, it's funny, I think when we get to a stage where there are, again, we're just showing how much work goes into this, because I think people don't realise there's like this massive shortlisting process, then there's a consistent relationship part that underlies everything, and then when you get to that shortlist, you end up like, we talk to everyone on the phone as much as we can. So we'll be like, we'll email them, or we'll just be like, do you have time to talk? We're, sign an NDA, then we're thinking about this campaign. Do you have any ideas? And they'll often go away and think about it for a few days, or come back with something very different that we wouldn't have expected. Yeah. And I think, one, it's always good to let them try those ideas. Often when we're guaranteeing views, there's a limit to how much we let them experiment and let a brand funding them experiment. But the content you end up with is so much better because they're actually excited someone's listened to them. Yeah. And often being an influencer is a creator, not influencer, being a creator is really lonely. You can be quite isolated at home, and having someone who says, oh, I've watched you for a while, by the way, we think you're great and believe in you enough to work with the brand. Also, that's kind of a good idea, is quite validating or quite comforting.
Especially in our niche, where half of them are just stuck at home with the kids all day, and that's partly why they've fallen into this. Absolutely. It's very, it's nice to speak to somebody.
Favourite campaign you've ever worked on?
There was one for Scottish Widows last September, which was all about Pensions Awareness Day, which on its sort of headline sounded really dull. And it could have been, but we ended up with 20 of our mini micros and a couple of nanos as well, all attending their local Pension Awareness Day events. So it was completely regional, and really driving that message home on Instagram with their smaller followings. And then we had a really big name with sort of 800,000 followers who did the overarching brand awareness sort of big drive of messaging. She attended an event at the House of Lords, and it was all about raising awareness of how women basically don't save in the same way that men do, and they are being hit in a massive way by not saving for their pension, and women live longer. And so you're hit even harder, and it kind of all spirals. And then that was followed up with more content, and it was teamed up with our insight team at Mumsnet, who had done a survey all about saving and whether women actually do know about pensions and savings and things like that. And so then the influencers followed up with follow-up content on their blogs all about that report, and sort of it all tied in really nicely. And then we followed up again with a second campaign. That would have been last September, October, and we've just finished wave 2, which was all about the auto-enrollment. So it was kind of all leading up to all of this. And then there's been 2 Facebook Lives on Mumsnet's Facebook page supporting that content as well, which included influencers that were part of the campaign and things. And I really enjoyed it because it was A, varied, B, really specific.
Substantive.
Yeah, it was really nice to do something as well that felt quite worthwhile.
Yep.
But obviously as Mumsnet, it's in our DNA to do anything sort of vaguely feminist that's supporting women. So it felt really, really strong brand fit for us as well, which was lovely. Obviously, we do turn away clients who aren't going to be a good brand fit. We're not totally soulless, but that one in particular was just really nice to work on. And what was even more interesting was how you saw how those influencers brought to life such a dull and dry topic as pensions. I mean, some of the images from those Pensions Awareness Day, you couldn't have got that if you'd done billboards or if you'd done sort of display advertising on websites and things. You know, they just brought that personality, and as a result, some of the comments that were coming on those Instagram posts, on the Facebook Live, all of that was really, really rich, and you could see that it had that sort of in-depth message, was delivered, was achieved, all good, and it hit benchmarks. I think it exceeded benchmarks actually, so that was nice too.
Sounds like it would. I mean, it's interesting because I think you tapped into the fact mums often spend so much time looking after other people, they don't look after themselves. Yes. And that's where a lot of the pensions issue comes from.
Yes.
Right?
It was really interesting as well, because out of the research it showed that women fundamentally think about saving differently. We're going a bit off track now, but so men just behaviourally think much further ahead, whereas the women were thinking, right, I need to save in case the boiler goes in the next year or two. So they do think about saving. You know, we're not totally inept. we're actually very, very good at what we do. But it was just a really different way of saving. Yeah. But obviously, if you want to actually have something to, like, you know, live off when you're 80, 90, 70, 65, you need to start thinking more long term.
What do you think people should do to build better campaigns? What is the one thing you think people consistently with influence marketing overlook when they're designing campaigns or don't think about that would make them better?
We're still getting asked about reach, which just boggles my mind, frankly, that we're still having this conversation. You should be thinking about engagement and about actually whether or not you have affected that follower or that audience in some way. Because if you are trying to drive sales, if you're trying to drive brand awareness, pretty much any kind of KPI, you need to affect that follower. Just having them be reached randomly, and they might have actually just scrolled past it on their feed, but they're still clocked as an impression, is nothing.
And also, did you notice in the Fire Festival deck, if you looked at it, so in the Fire Festival deck, there's a moment where they're like going through all the influencers they had included in the campaign, and they add up like their total number of followers. So it's like, we could have reached 300 million people. And I was like, yeah. And then you look at the engagement, because obviously the post was like an orange square, which I get was trying to shock or whatever. But it got such a low engagement rate. It was like, it was less than 1%, like well under 1%. So you're looking at it and you're like, oh, you're talking about how many people you could have reached, and then you're just showing us how few you actually did. Like, and this, I never understand why people like subscriber number like necessarily is the most important thing sometimes when we're being asked about YouTube campaigns. So I get asked to do a campaign, they'll be like, they only want to work with people with over 1 million subscribers. And I'm like, why? Some of these people may have 2 million subscribers, they're getting 25,000 views. Yeah. So what is the point?
But not only that, but those 25,000 views, how far into that video are they watching? Yeah. Are they literally only watching the first 10 seconds? Or if it's a 10-minute long video, if they're watching even the first 4, that is so much more interesting. Unless your sponsorship is in that last minute, then, you know, still not great.
So sometimes with agencies, they're just really excited to work with a specific influencer, or they're very excited to say they've worked with a specific influencer, or to maybe put that forward for an award or something. Yeah. And I think that's when you can't have that direct conversation with the brand, coupled with when there are maybe other priorities of people in between, that and a lack of education maybe sometimes in between, because a lot of these agencies aren't specialist.
Yes.
That's where it tends to go.
You're right, actually. And we're working on another campaign, which is a 3-way agency collaboration with the brand. And that has gone beautifully. And couldn't sing those agencies' praises enough. Yeah. And so they've kind of really accepted, we understand what we're doing. We've been hired by the brand to do what we do. But we pitched as a 3-way agency as well. So it was a very different start. Whereas others, the agency might come to us with the brief in the example I gave earlier, and it's almost like all the agencies involved are just sort of peacocking and fluffing up their feathers, and it's like, no, I'm the expert. No, I'm the expert. And that just isn't helpful for anybody. And it's ultimately the consumer and the brand that lose out. So I think there's a long way to go till agencies are all working in harmony. I don't know if we'll ever reach it, because obviously we are technically in competition.
Yeah.
But also should kind of be trying to work together. Or
Have you had campaigns go wrong? I mean, everyone has, kind of. What is your advice to people if they want to rectify it?
My mama brought me up to say that honesty is the best policy. So, honesty is the best policy. She'll be so pleased. If something goes wrong, obviously be honest, but have a solution. Don't just kind of go, this has gone wrong. Soz. Like, that's not helpful. Have a solution and be ready to action it if the client needs to approve it once they've approved it. From an influencer's perspective, if it goes wrong, whether that's that you just haven't reached benchmark, or you've had a lot of abuse as a result of it, and like just your followers did not respond well to that brand, for example, be quick to action. Social media moves so fast, and you have to remember that you live in and work in that social world. You have to be able and willing to react as quickly as people would require.
I think also it's often like transparency. So if your audience really don't like that you worked with the brand, be very honest and be like, I worked with them because of this, and defend yourself. Like, most of the time there is a reason and there's research you went into that maybe they haven't seen, because I think audiences often just see the outcome. It's not their fault. They don't see that there's months of negotiation going into every campaign.
But be honest with yourself as well. If in your heart of hearts you know that you took that job for the money or the free holiday or whatever it was that you got, you kind of also have to be a bit honest with yourself and go, well, maybe it wasn't entirely suitable, or whatever it is that the problem was. But obviously don't go for the deals that aren't authentic and natural to your channel. Blah blah blah.
Also, like, if you as an agency have got something wrong, and we're really honest about this, if we get something wrong, we'll spend our agency fee on making more content.
That's exactly the same at Mumsnet. If it's our mistake, we can literally pay the price, kind of thing, but we will rectify it by doing so.
What are you most excited for, the next challenge in this industry, or most excited for?
At F8, obviously, Zuckerberg stands up and it's like, privacy, privacy, privacy. I think that's going to be the next big challenge for influencer marketing. I think that will be really interesting to see how that manifests itself in influencer marketing, whether that especially on the big name influencers, they might start to have closed sort of private networks, whether that's a WhatsApp group or an Apple photo stream that only you get access to if you give your email address and you become part of the club, kind of thing. I don't know where that leaves people like the mini micros, because obviously newsletters are a really great way of having that sort of more one-to-one relationship. But that privacy element I think is going to become very interesting, because it's less about the broadcast, which is what influencer marketing has always been until now.
And it kind of pushes towards measuring by engagement and conversions rather than reach, finally.
And, the Instagram hiding likes thing, that kind of plays into that privacy thing as well. It's less about the whole public face of everything. It's much more about sort of actually what's truly engaging and speaking to somebody. It'd be interesting.
I find it really interesting looking at like the close friends feature came out on Instagram, 4-5 months ago? Mm-hmm. And I don't really know anybody who uses it. And do you use it?
I do, yes. But that's partly because a bunch of our network follow me on Instagram. But so do my school friends and my uni friends. So I do use it sometimes, because there's just a couple of things. No offence to our lovely, lovely network. There's just some things that are not work related and they are private. But I also want, my school friends to see my 5-year-old sort of blowing out her birthday candles or whatever it is.
I'm so excited to follow you on Instagram. But I don't know. I don't know that many people who use it.
No, I haven't heard of anyone even talking about it.
And I haven't. We were once planning a campaign with the brand, and the brand asked like, "Oh, is there any use for this feature?" Because it just come out, and we were like, "We don't." The influencers weren't using it, the creators, so we didn't include it.
The other problem for stuff like that at the moment is the tracking just isn't there. So, we're they haven't even opened the API for stories yet. So our tracking platform doesn't yet automatically track stories even. So if you then add things like the close friends feature, and it's like, we can do it, but it's very, very manual, and it's just not as slick, or even sort of, I'm not even sure kind of the tracking is available, like in terms of the metrics.
Yeah, I massively agree with you, because it's like, even if you start looking at WhatsApp, there's no WhatsApp data, there's no WhatsApp analytics.
Though apparently WhatsApp is the most, I read something that a text is open 98% of the time. Yeah. So if you were going to go for DMs or direct mail or whatever, that's what WhatsApp is kind of relying on at the moment.
But I think that's partly because it's so hard to get that data on people. Yeah. And I think as soon as that starts becoming commercialized, it's going to change. Which is,
Facebook owns WhatsApp. It's going to change.
Yeah, exactly. So now, like, if you're the first ever messenger ad in WhatsApp, you'd get opened more, like a ridiculously high rate, but not if you're the 50th. Yeah. I had this recently. I was at a conference, and they decided to add everyone coming to the conference, including like 90 influencers. They added everyone, all the speakers, everyone attending, the organisers, all to a WhatsApp group. And that WhatsApp group, because it was full of prolific content creators,
oh my God,
was unbearable. Within, like, it was started like 3 days before I arrived, and I just already wasn't checking it. Yeah. And then every time you'd miss everything, you'd be so overwhelmed. It was full of like very intense messages.
I struggle with the group messages that are just between me and my 7 friends from school. Like, at the end of my workday, I look at it, it's like 98 notifications. Like, oh my God, guys, come on. Like, please. I couldn't cope if I had that on my phone as well.
No, it just made me feel very stressed. It made me feel like my work was very omnipresent. Yes. So it's like, I don't know, as much as I mean, people did communicate with each other. They did learn about where to go for the hotels or whatever. It was still a very intrusive, very stressful experience. So my fear with brands doing that more is it's going to have to feel one-on-one.
Yeah.
Even if it's one.
Social Chain at the moment is doing it really well. So they do daily updates of like top 5 news articles for the industry that you should be reading. And I think that's a really good way of doing it. It's not a group, so there's not like 10,000 of us all talking in a group, but it's I really like that. And occasionally they'll do like a quiz to see if you've been reading the articles and stuff. I don't do the quizzes, but that you can see is sort of a gentle introduction to a brand being in your inbox. And I'm sure Social Chain now, like all their campaigns probably by this time next year will be on WhatsApp, but yeah, you can see that gentle introduction. That is a much better way of doing it, I think, than what you've just described.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Actually, I'll check it out. Other news, hiding likes. We've already kind of touched on it.
Yes, I'm very excited for it. I'm of the opinion that marketers will always find a way. We just always do. Yeah. So mental health should come first. And if that is truly what Instagram is trying to acknowledge and make a bit better, then that needs to be the priority.
Is that ever the priority of a social media platform?
Absolutely not. But if it even helps a couple of teenagers, or people in their 30s or 50s even, be slightly less stressed by being on the app. I mean, it is terrifying when you see a teen, like my family is sort of higgledy-piggledy in age, so my brother-in-law is 14, and people his age, if they get less than 500 likes, albeit not him, he's not part of this, he's very chilled, they think they failed. And it's like, they don't consider themselves a creator or an influencer, it's just that is the norm. And that's terrifying to me. Yeah. I'm like, what? And so if you remove that sort of competition element, fine, they can still see the likes themselves, but it's very hard then to know, well, if you only get 50 likes, fine, I can see that I've got 50 likes, but nobody else can. And I also therefore don't know what anyone else is getting. So the competition is gone.
Unless you discuss it with your friends.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure they will. But baby steps. We have to start somewhere.
It's funny because for me, I see this as like, one of the reasons we work on YouTube, and I'm actually happy to work on YouTube campaigns, is because I think it's a much less bad for mental health platform. I believe Instagram's all about aspiration, right? So you scroll past, there's someone with an amazing body, there's someone who's just naturally very beautiful, there's someone with a car or a holiday you can't have. And I said this in Qatar to a guy from Vodafone. We were talking and he was like, oh no, that's not a problem in Qatar. I was like, what do you mean? He was like, Instagram isn't bad for mental health or aspiration. I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, you know, in Qatar, the people who use Instagram are the wealthy. So we can have whatever we want. We can buy whatever we want. And I was just like...
And it's another world.
And I was like, no. But I was also thinking about it. I was like, no, that's not true. No matter if you have all the money in the world, the thing you don't have is time. And so all you do is you look at these people, and if you had all the money in the world, you're still spoiled for choice. Yeah. And you're just scrolling past these people who constantly make you feel inadequate because you're not doing enough with your time.
Yes.
Because you can't go on all the holidays, you can't post for all the photos, you can't eat all the healthy food and all the unhealthy food, you can't buy all the clothes, you can't lose all the weight and gain the muscle. Like, it's not...
No.
You can't...
But that still exists on YouTube.
It exists in a different way. I think, like, if you are just beautiful with very little personality, you don't transfer well to YouTube. It doesn't work. It genuinely doesn't. Like, a lot of this is not me saying Instagram creators are hot than YouTube creators. But it's just that if you don't have a personality that people can connect with, or if you don't know how to honestly talk to people in a way that, whether it's discussing something with a camera or a person, you will not gain subscribers. It's a very personality driven thing.
But Instagram is changing, right? In that sense, in that between stories, IGTV now being in the feed, that's starting to infiltrate.
Slowly, and it's trying to. And it's still failing, which is why they have to hide the likes. Like, it's just still not... Yeah, it's not good enough. It's not. The number of times you're on Instagram, you scroll past someone, or you found a creator, and you want to find them again, and you can't find them.
Oh, yeah, that drives me mad.
Them. Like, you don't feel like you'd be friends with them.
I wonder if this is partly niche, though. Because obviously I work very much in the parenting niche, and don't get me wrong, there are some people there who are not nice people. There are some people there who are totally fake. Like, I'm not going to pretend that all parent influencers are perfect, but there is at the same time a big swathe of them that is very much about keeping it real. You know,
which is where, like, Motherpucker started, right? Like,
parenting the shit out of life. And you do get the faker side of it, but it's very much about everyone has been that mum or dad who is stuck at home, either in that first day with the child, or when you're pregnant, or even when they're 5 and you're just having a bad day with the kids, and you scroll through Instagram and you feel like crap because everybody is having a great day and their kids are beautifully behaved. But I am yet to have one of those days, and we all have them, where I'll scroll through Instagram and it'll be like, you're having a great day, you're having a great day. Oh, you're also having a crap day. Oh, now I don't feel so bad. Like, there is always somebody who's flying that flag, I think, in the parent world, whereas perhaps in fashion and beauty,
it's not so much.
Or in health and fitness, outside of the parenting world, it's less inclined to be that way, which if you live in that bubble, because that's what you're interested in, and therefore you've curated your feed to be all those types of people, you are much more at risk of feeling that way,
and you're
potentially
quite likely to have people who, there's a theory like the selfies in the caption now, so you'll have people post quite beautiful photos, or, you know, they're still together, they're still, you know, they've still got their shit together, they're not like, you know, whatever, covered in kid vomit, great, like they're
been there,
but they'll say things in the caption like, oh, having such a hard day, sometimes this is so difficult, and you're like, I appreciate you're trying, but you're also still at the same time like perpetuating a cycle that I just don't want to be part of. So maybe it is because I think parenting is a niche that people have begun by rejecting social media making them feel crap, although there are lots of mummy vloggers who are like, this middle child doesn't get the same level of engagement when I post photos on.
Oh, absolutely. Like, as I say, I'm not pretending that there are not very cold and fake people in the parenting world. It's influencer marketing. There will always be those people.
There's a lot. I don't know if you can fix Instagram. I don't know if it's fixable. I also don't know if it's able to be fixable and cool, which I think is an issue. I think that
was Facebook's problem. We've been and gone kind of thing.
And I think stories are great.
I mean, when was the last time you went on Facebook? Not for work.
I message friends on Facebook sometimes.
That's Facebook Messenger. That is not Facebook.
I deleted them both. I did a digital detox, but sadly only 4 days because I had to come back on Instagram for work. But it was really annoying.
That doesn't count.
Because we were checking influencers posts, creative posts, so, but I did not miss Facebook at all. Instagram, I kind of still wanted the visual stimulation. I was like, yeah. I like the all immersive, like all encompassing thing. Facebook, just didn't even miss it.
It's dead.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm ready.
Whew, you ready? Quick fire. Right. Your favourite YouTube channel ever?
I'm assuming I can't say Mumsnet.
You can. Favourite Instagram creator?
I have a lot of time for Actually Mummy at the moment, who's the one I mentioned earlier, who's 50 plus with a teenage daughter. And pretty much anyone from the Bookstagram community are like...
A brand that you actually like?
I live in the house of Mac, so probably Apple. Like everything we own is Apple.
Your favourite cuisine?
Mexican, hands down.
Favourite advertising campaign?
The Haribo one. This is like 15 years old now. And it's the kids pretending to be like in the office or whatever, and the parents have eaten the Haribo and they're not supposed to have done. Oh, and the guy for the NFL, was it last year? And he'd been dropped from the NFL for doing the anti-Trump or anti-whatever it was. I thought that was fabulous.
Phone or text?
In reality, text. But I am trying to talk to people like with my actual voice a bit more now.
Your favourite drink?
Black tea. No sugar.
The dream video you'd help an influencer make?
Definitely something to do with helping women in some way. I have no idea what the creative concept would be or what it would be, but I would love to do anything along those lines.
If you could be any animal?
Tiger.
Favourite social network?
Instagram. Oh, Pinterest.
Least favourite social network?
Snap.
Next holiday destination?
I think we're going to the south of France this summer, but we're toying with some time in Japan as well. And my daughter wants to go to Mexico for Dias de los Muertos in October for half term because she adores the film Coco. So there is some things to work out as to where our next holiday destination would be.
So fucking jealous. So jealous.
We can't afford all of these by any stretch. We have to choose. But
Favourite brand to work with? Dream brand to work with if you could work with any brand?
I'm trying to get publishers to work with us more, purely for personal gain of free books. But they don't have any bloody budget.
Worst fad on YouTube?
The Hinch stuff. Mainly just because I hate cleaning. So when all of our influencers started doing their Hinch videos, it was like, oh, don't make me watch cleaning, please.
Last time you cried?
I did well up. One of our influencers' videos about 2 days ago, little snippets. Her husband-to-be spent like a month putting together a video that then became his Ask Her to Marry Her video. And he'd interviewed her as part of it about how they've met, they've got 2 kids. I don't even know why it made me cry. I am not that sentimental.
Favourite ever influence marketing campaign that was nothing to do with you?
The Clarins one that got announced today with In the Fro, I think is brilliant.
Banging. Cool. Good, done. But thank you so much. I want us to work on a campaign together now.
I agree. Thank you for having me. I've had a great time. It's nice to be interviewed rather than the interviewer for once.
Yeah, actually people care what you have to say. Yeah, shocking. Tune in next time for a creator podcast. We're going to do another one of these, and then we'll do another marketing one in like a month. But if you have any questions for Amie, she'll check comments, so please ask us questions underneath.
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant. And which brands would you like to see on here? Cool. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.